Welcome back. Prominent South Carolina lawyer Alec Murdaugh is being sued by one of the survivors of a 2019 boat crash involving his late son. Connor Cook was one of 5 friends Murdaugh's son Paul invited on a boat. Paul later crashed that boat into a bridge, killing 1 person. Cook claims that Murdaugh attempted to orchestrate a campaign to falsely blame him for the accident. He also claims that Murdaugh should have never allowed his 19-year-old son to use his boat because he had known alcohol issues. The Murdaugh family has been at the center of a very tangled case involving opioid abuse, a botched suicide attempt, and insurance fraud. The Murdaugh's wife and son, Paul, were killed in June, and their murders still have not been solved. Murdaugh was then shot in the head on September 4th, but survived. He admitted to setting up the hit on himself so that his surviving son could collect insurance money. Murdaugh is now at an out-of-state rehabilitation center where he's being treated for an opioid addiction. Court TV legal correspondent Shanley Painter has more on this murder mystery in South Carolina.
I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
That's the 911 call Alec Murdaugh made on June 7th, 2021, after finding the bodies of his wife and son shot to death at their South Carolina hunting lodge.
Okay, what is her name?
Maggie and Paul.
Maggie is her name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And please hurry.
Alec Murdaugh told police he discovered the double homicide after returning home from checking on his terminally ill father.
Both died of multiple gunshot wounds. Maggie Murdaugh was shot by a semi-automatic rifle, police believe, and Paul Murdaugh was the victim of at least 2 shotgun blasts, one to the chest at least, and one to the head and upper arm.
For nearly a century, the Murdaugh name has embodied a legacy of power and justice in South Carolina's Low Country. Here in the small town of Hampton, it's virtually impossible to find someone who does not know of the prominent legal family. But recently, the name has become synonymous with tragedy. At the time of his death, 22-year-old Paul Murdaugh was awaiting trial, charged with 3 felony counts of boating under the influence for a 2019 crash that killed 19-year-old Mallory Beach. According to depositions taken in that case, Paul Murdaugh illegally purchased alcohol at Parker's convenience store using his older brother's ID. Surveillance video shows him leaving the gas station, towing his father's 17-foot boat. As he exits the store, you can see him raise his arms in a triumphant gesture to his friends. After attending an oyster roast, the 6 friends headed by boat to a bar in downtown Beaufort, South Carolina. And later, Murdaugh stumbles on the dock as he and his friends return to the boat around 1 a.m. Just over an hour later, the boat slammed into a bridge piling, and Connor Cook called 911.
What bridge is it? Paul, what bridge is this? Paul, what bridge?
911, where's your emergency? Hello? Police, fire, EMS. Hello?
We're in a boat crash on Arthur Street. There's 6 of us and 1 is missing.
The body of Mallory Beach was found nearly a week later in a marsh about 5 miles from the crash scene. The charges against Paul Murdaugh were dropped after his death, but the investigation is ongoing.
We reported, and it has since been confirmed by multiple attorneys who have clients related to the case, that there is an active investigation into possible tampering, possible obstruction of justice related to that boat crash. And specifically, Alec Murdaugh is one of the folks who was mentioned in connection with that inquiry.
In another bizarre twist, 3 months after his wife and son were shot and killed, Alec Murdaugh called 911 again, this time to report that he had been shot. The family's attorney says someone in a truck shot at Murdaugh while he was changing a tire by the side of the road. The injury was described as a superficial head wound. After he was released from the hospital, Murdaugh immediately checked himself into a rehab facility to treat an addiction problem, according to his lawyer. Then it was revealed that Murdaugh was accused of stealing millions of dollars from the law firm built by his family. And the South Carolina Supreme Court suspended his law license while the misconduct case is investigated. Just another chapter in this Southern murder mystery.
Still with us, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Susan Williams. Susan, I know that you are a South Carolina attorney. Tell us, what are your thoughts? I know you've been covering this case and that you are well versed in all of the details. Every time we start paying attention to it, something new is being learned.
The latest going on right now is that there is an update on the Murdaugh housekeeper. She worked for the Murdaughs for over 20 years, and she tripped and fell, according to Alec Murdaugh, over his dogs in his home. And then there was, I think she lived for like 3 weeks. There was a wrongful death settlement. Alec Murdaugh allegedly went to Gloria Satterfield's 2 sons and said, I'm going to sue myself, and encouraged them allegedly to hire his college roommate and godfather of the now deceased Paul Murdaugh. And long story short, there was a settlement that, according to attorney Eric Bland, was somewhere between $3 and $4 million. And Gloria Satterfield's children, her boys, never have seen one dime of that. It is very, very unusual. Some things that have come out recently in the news here on Miss Satterfield, who basically raised the Murdaugh boys. She was a housekeeper and a nanny, and she, in her obituary, her family said that she thought of the Murdaughs as amongst the people that she loved.
This case has so many twists and turns because it's also my understanding that they have reopened her case to determine whether or not there are any potential criminal charges. And I don't know if I have this right. I'm curious if you know that they are actually going to do an autopsy or relook at cause of death to see if she really did appear to trip and fall.
I don't know if that is true or not. Certainly there have been rumors. As an attorney, I tend to look for what are facts in this case. And what I've seen from the court document in this case is that one of the boat crash survivors, Connor Cook, his attorney filed some documents, and believe it or not, the same exact attorney, Corey Fleming, was representing Connor Cook at some point, and there are allegations that Corey Fleming worked on a campaign to not have Alec Murdaugh's son implicated as the driver in the boating accident. And again, these are allegations. They're in court documents. And, there was a young lady that was killed during this. And according to depositions, Connor Cook was told by Alec Murdaugh to keep his mouth shut when it came to talking to law enforcement about who's driving the boat that night, which would have been Alec Murdaugh's son, allegedly.
So many deaths. You have the housekeeper, and then you have the young, very young girl, tragic boat accident in which she died. And I know her body was found over in other parts of the water of the lake, of the marsh. And then you have his son and wife who are murdered, killed, shot, and there are pictures of them. And then he gets shot in the head and he's okay. But then some convoluted stories. And really, I feel like this is made up of all these different pieces of everything. Wealthy family, lawyers. They are well known for a very, very long time in the legal community because they have a history of being lawyers in that community. And then death befalls so many times, one begins to wonder if it is coincidence or not. Let's listen together if we could now. I believe that we do have some of Gloria's attorney speaking. Let's listen.
Certainly there were questions by my clients because after she unfortunately fell, she was airlifted to a hospital and she had a traumatic brain injury. She never was able to communicate with them for the next 3 weeks until she died. So it was Alec Murdaugh who told the story of that she had tripped and fell down the stairs over his dogs. And so they trusted him. He hand walked them to his best friend and college roommate to bring a lawsuit against himself on behalf of the estate.
Well, Susan, that seems a little odd that he would actually hand walk it in to say, bring a lawsuit against me, number one. Number two, the other thing I'd love for you to address is the fact that who's been controlling the narrative through most of this? Alec Murdaugh, because we know he's the one that's been giving information, making statements about why he was shot in the head and that he'd set that up because of the life insurance policy. And it's coming out of his attorney's office. And so I think when you control the narrative, there's a good opportunity for manipulation. What are your thoughts?
Well, he's controlling the narrative and he's not being truthful. We do know that because he had police, helicopter pilot, staff, nurses, doctors thinking that he had been shot in the head, and we were on this wild goose chase trying to figure out what happened to poor Alex. And it turns out he, according to him, set it all up himself. And then we've got, on top of all of this, on top of with the double murder investigation, we have not mentioned Stephen Smith, who was a young man that was found dead in the middle of a country road in 2000, I think he was in 2018, as no one was ever arrested. There were some definitely different opinions from the Medical University of South Carolina. That person, the pathologist and law enforcement and the coroner even had different ideas of how his death came about, and it was ruled a hit and run, but it may have been something different. We don't know yet. Those are some allegations.
And what do we know about? We know that he's an inpatient, and so he's in a facility. I just want to clarify for all of those with us this afternoon, that doesn't mean that he won't or can't face criminal charges. I don't know if he will or not, but certainly that doesn't insulate him for any potential criminal charges, if any are brought.
No, it doesn't. And I believe that it is a strategy that his lawyers are using, possibly, allegedly, to gain sympathy for him. And, you know, if it were as simple as going to inpatient therapy to run away from charges or escape liability or criminal liability, then I would just cart all of my clients into inpatient rehab if they could afford it. It's nice that he has the luxury of that. And, you know, it certainly is, I think, a way to garner some sympathy. And I'm not by any means saying that I don't support rehab, that I don't believe that opioid addiction is a serious problem. It is, but there are some other things going on here with Mr. Murdaugh.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Absolutely. Our time is out for the day. Susan Williams, thank you so much for joining us. For all our viewers, just a reminder, number one, Tennessee, the jury is still out, 10 hours, 4 minutes. So you know, R. Kelly has been sent home at almost 4 hours of deliberating. That jury will come back on Monday to continue with that deliberation. That's it for me. Up next, Michael Ayala. Don't go anywhere. He'll be right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.